I chose my friends carefully. The more politically active black students, the foreign students, the Chicanos, the Marxist professors and structural feminists and punk rock performance poets.
The mainstream white polluters and the mainstream white environmentalists wound up collaborating to put all the poisons in the black community, in the Latino community, in the poor communities. No more broken treaties. No more broken treaties. Give them the wealth. Give them the wealth.
Days away from fundamentally transforming the United States.
Van Jones is...
This is his house, apparently.
Van Jones, right? No? Van Jones, we were so delighted to be able to recruit him into the White House. We've been watching him really for, he's not that old, but for as long as he's been active out in Oakland and all of the ways that he has.
Robert McChesney, who is the co-founder of Free Press. Can you explain who this guy is? He is a hardcore Marxist. He's a professor at the University of Illinois, formerly at the University of Wisconsin. And he has said that we need structural media reform, things like the Fairness Doctrine, things like taxing commercial radio to subsidize nonprofit, things like net neutrality, in order to pave the way for a revolution. He uses that term. He uses the term revolution. And he also talks about taking capitalism apart brick by brick, does he not? He did. He advised President Obama that he must brick by brick take apart capitalism. Take apart capitalism brick by brick. Remember the guy who was, ahead of all the green jobs? The communist taking apart capitalism brick by brick. Isn't that interesting? So the second reason to have net neutrality is social justice. When we come back, the third, which really should disturb you next. Things will load slowly, you'll have a more difficult time. The long-term implication is much, much more sinister because all of these folks up there on the board and all these people we've talked about want the internet to be owned and controlled by government. And when they put regulations in that destroy private investment, they'll step in and they'll put government investment in, taxpayer dollars in. They've already got $7.2 billion from the stimulus, and they said, and Susan Crawford told the Wall Street Journal that that's just a down payment. Okay, hang on just a second. A Maoist. I think Rahm is just evil. I don't think he's anything but. I don't want to call him a Marxist because I don't think he is. We have a Maoist. We have a Marxist. We have a Marxist. She a Marxist? Cyber utopian, a little different. Marxist? Fair to say, yeah. Fair to say? Okay. So we have Marxists that are designing and working on net neutrality, are big believers in net neutrality, right? Gosh, it does seem like these would be the wrong people to help, innovate business for it. And so what they want to do is, if I can do the third one, control content. Please play Mark Lloyd's clip. You have this full screen? Go ahead and put it up for me. Unfortunately, the powerful cable and telecom industry doesn't value the internet for its public interest benefits. Instead, these companies too often believe that they are there to safeguard their profits. They must control what content you see and how to get it. Their plans, I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses, I can barely read this. Their plans could have dire consequences for those whose voices are often marginalized by our nation's media system. And I have to tell you something, and I mean this sincerely, and I'd love to hear, when has America had the opportunity, or any human being on the planet had the opportunity to be heard through the unregulated internet more than right now? Never, and Glenn, that's why they turn things inside out. And I think that Mark Lloyd, who of course is a huge proponent of the Fairness Doctrine, I think that net neutrality will end up doing the same thing that Fairness Doctrine did to radio, to the internet, because they'll say, now we've put all this taxpayer money in, it's a public trust, we can't possibly allow these unbalanced viewpoints out there, and they'll start to regulate content and require so-called balance and allow those marginalized voices that Mark Lloyd talked about, and that's where this becomes really frightening, because when government censors you or requires you to alter your content, you will not have a competitor to turn to the way you would if the phone company tried it. You could go right to the cable company. And so that's why I think it's really frightening.
This really incredible revolution, democratic revolution, to begin to put in place things that were going to have an impact on the people of Venezuela.
In a 2007 speech, you said, and I quote, "We ought to ban hunting." that the statement you quoted is a provocation, an offhand remark in a speech that was on another topic.
Help me with the issue of legal rights for animals.
In terms of my own academic writings, the suggestion, which was meant as a suggestion for contemplation, was that under state law that prevents cruelty to animals, it might be that the enforcement by criminal prosecutors could be supplemented by suits by private people protecting animals from violations of existing state law.
It does no good to win on net neutrality if net neutrality winds up having a neutral impact on the lives of the people. I would argue that fighting, not just at the FCC, as important as that is, but fighting to make sure that every local city and municipality is making free broadband available to everybody has to be number one on our agenda. It has to be.
Well, it turns out he has a strange fixation with population control as well, and has contemplated something frightening in terms of a means of achieving it. In a 1977 textbook co-authored with environmental activists Paul and Ann Ehrlich, Holdren wondered how, quote, population control laws, even including laws requiring compulsory abortion, could be sustained under the existing Constitution. He also argued that, quote, a program of sterilizing women after their second or third child might be easier to implement than trying to sterilize men. This, of course, would be feasible. Only in countries where the majority of births are medically assisted. Unfortunately, such a program, therefore, is not practical for most less developed countries. Yes, that's really a shame, isn't it? Is this the sort of thing that Holdren published for the public to read? And one can only imagine the sort of advice that he's given the president.
I think that there are at least three ingredients for that transformational change to happen. We do need visionary leadership that's capable of building durable coalitions. We need big crises, economic, foreign policy, and otherwise, that force the breakdown of old paradigms and old ways of seeing the world. And most importantly, we need independent social movements.
Same day, manufacturing czar Ron Bloom was appointed.
Generally speaking, we get the joke. We know that the free market is nonsense. We know that the whole point is to game the system, to beat the market, or at least find someone who'll pay you a lot of money because they're convinced that there is a free lunch. We know this is largely about power, that it's an adults-only, no-limit game. We kind of agree with Mao that political power comes largely from the barrel of a gun. And we get it, that if you want a friend, you should get a dog.
We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. Don't accuse me of having a socialist. We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. Don't accuse me of having a socialist mind.
How about the funding for it? Frankly, it's not really something I followed closely. I didn't even know that Acorn was getting a whole lot of federal money.
Before I even get inaugurated, during the transition, we're going to be calling all of you in to help us shape the agenda. We're going to be having meetings all across the country with community organizations so that you have input into the agenda for the next presidency of the United States of America. I'll spend my entire adult life working with SEIU. I'm not a newcomer to this. I didn't just suddenly discover SEIU.
Barack Obama has a long history of working with Acorn. He was a trainer for them in their Chicago seminars. He was their lawyer. I suspect at some point Acorn paid him. I suspect some of that was probably federal funds.
Okay.
How about the funding for it? Frankly, it's not really something I followed closely. I didn't even know that Acorn was getting a whole lot of federal money.
Constitution.
And taxes.
The service you provide. Let me make sure there's a code for it, okay?
A code for prostitution.
You might have to name it something else. We can do this. How about if you want to do that? Okay, you got it. Other amusement and recreational services.
We could probably classify the recreational services, right? She knows her stuff because she was saying that what we can do is classify this not as prostitution.
Exactly.
That is recreation.
No.
What was it called?
Performing arts.
Performing arts.
If anyone asks you, your business is a performing artist. But you are. Okay? So you're not lying.
And I tell anybody, do not ever, ever